This is the story of how a virus we didn't even know existed 3 months ago has changed the way we live. COVID-19 has impacted life everywhere for billions of people. And it started here in China, in the city of Wuhan. This was the local train station at the time of Chinese New Year. It was busy enough, but people were staying away. Those who had travelled were worried.
I'm sending my nephew back to Beijing. I'm his aunt. We planned to spend Chinese New Year here in Wuhan, but the situation here is not good.
I tried to stay indoors as much as possible, try to avoid coming places like this where there's a lot of virus. If I do go out, I wear a mask.
At the local hospital, they were refusing all patients, except those suspected of having the virus. They were dealing with the initial outbreak. This food market was pointed to as the source of that outbreak. It was said that illegal wildlife was being sold here. On the streets of Wuhan, there was a heavy official presence as they tried to contain the virus. All wildlife and poultry was banned, and travel from the city was restricted before a total lockdown was put in place. Wuhan became the first city in the world to be sealed off. Roads were closed, trains were stopped, and flights were cancelled. A city of 11 million people was effectively quarantined. People did rush to beat the cut-off. There were soldiers with thermometers at the ready on the way out. Those who had fled spoke of their concern.
Yes, I am worried. It's said the city will be closed. I need to go back to work after Chinese New Year, but I don't know when the shutdown will stop, so I decided to leave early.
I think what the government does is right. It should have done it earlier. After all, this is a national adversity. For us, the epidemic needs to be controlled and restrained into a certain scale.
I saw it in the news. It was everywhere in the news. No one can get out after 10 a.m. I felt the situation was indeed quite serious. We had planned to go back today anyway, so we wanted to see if we could go earlier.
But this was to become a crisis that would stretch far beyond Wuhan and far beyond China. All passengers from Wuhan to the UK were supposed to be screened on landing, but that was not the case for this man.
Completely and utterly normal, aside from the fact everybody's wearing more masks than normal. And we got a leaflet as we landed, just like if you have any symptoms, there has been a virus, please contact us. However, that was all in English, it wasn't in Chinese.
The city where the mystery virus first emerged had to cope in isolation. Face masks began to rapidly sell out across China as news of this virus spread.
Now the masks are sold out 4 days already. Like this morning, just within about 1 hour, we had a dozen people coming in to ask if we have masks.
I was busy just now and I forgot about the mask, but I should really wear it.
News of the outbreak travelled quickly, and we began to learn more about this worrying new virus.
This is the Wuhan novel coronavirus. Now, coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that can cause illness ranging from the common cold to more severe outbreaks, such as Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS, and severe acute respiratory syndrome, known as SARS. Now, this strain, called 2019 novel coronavirus, or nCoV, has not previously been identified in humans, so there's no vaccine. Humans have no immunity, and the virus is able to mutate, making it hard to control.
Within days, cases of the virus were reported in other countries in the Far East. In Japan, masked commuters staggered their journeys to work to avoid crowds. Schools shut for most of March. Many offices temporarily closed. Employees like Taki were encouraged to work from home.
I'm very worried about the coronavirus, so I'm working from home, and I'm also putting mask and have a sanitizer, and try to not go into the crowded place and avoiding the train, so forth, so on.
The Diamond Princess cruise ship was forced to dock at Yokohama and stay there after a man who disembarked in Hong Kong was found to have the virus. More than 600 people on board also tested positive for it. It was one of the largest cluster of cases outside of China. After 17 days in quarantine, some of the passengers were able to head for home. Alan and Vanessa Sanford hadn't left their room for a fortnight.
I think I might struggle a bit more with this second lot of 14 days.
What's worrying you?
Well, just that you can't get on with your life, that everything's on hold. And you also feel, but I've got this certificate that says I'm negative for the virus, and nobody on the aircraft is going to be anything other than negative for the virus. It just seems excessive. But I do understand as well that people are nervous about having people back in the country.
And when they got back to England, a further period in quarantine on the Wirral awaited them. This was the advice they were given by one man who had stayed there after getting home from Wuhan.
I won't lie, it is going to be boring at times, but, if you can sort of interact with others a little bit and, use the entertainment systems that you have, the time should pass pretty quickly.
While the Olympic Games are still going ahead, Japan's Prime Minister requested that other big events be postponed. Fewer people means less chance of potentially deadly clusters. But hundreds of infections were confirmed anyway, and fear started hitting Japanese businesses. Visitor numbers dropped quickly.
These days, we don't have a lot of people from United States or England or Europe, of course. So we are just worried if we can get the tourists.
It didn't take long for this virus to move out of the Far East and much further afield. At the end of January, Italy detected and isolated its first 2 cases. Both were Chinese tourists. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte immediately declared a state of emergency for 6 months, and Italy became the first country in the world to block flights from China.
The
economic impact could be very strong. At this moment, we can calculate that there will be a negative economic impact, but we're not able to predict how it is going to be, because we don't know yet the containment effect of the countermeasures that we adopted.
But by early March, the country had the second highest number of infections outside China. And that was despite an initial lockdown that saw 10 towns in northern Italy put into isolation. This was the area where Europe's outbreak seems to have started. People needed special permission to get in or out. As we filmed, 2 ambulances came out of the red zone. The paramedics in this one were wearing full-body protective suits. Just a few hours' drive away from here are popular French ski resorts like Chamonix.
I worry a lot, but I try to, travel with the mask and be careful, no?
I want to make sure that we kind of assist with public health efforts to avoid a spread, but I don't feel personally nervous about it.
In Switzerland, the World Health Organization is leading the fight against the virus.
The lesson is that every country has to be ready. Every country has to invest heavily in their health systems. So whenever virus comes, they can quickly detect, test, and provide health care for those who are sick.
Delegations come here from around the world to seek advice. Among the visitors, the British former Health Secretary.
The truth is that Schengen or no Schengen, we are in such a globalised world, as you can see by the way it's spread, that everyone has to take precautions. Even though the mortality rate at 1–3% sounds low, if millions and millions of people get this virus, that is a lot of deaths. And so that's why we have to prepare for worst-case scenarios.
Europe's response was calm and measured, but nobody could have predicted the restrictions that would soon follow. The epidemic spread rapidly to other countries, with France, Germany, Spain and the UK all recording sharp rises in cases. Some of Spain's first cases were recorded in the Canary Islands. This hotel in Tenerife confined guests to their rooms after a couple from northern Italy tested positive for the virus.
A letter was slipped under our door before we woke up. That's all we know.
It said that we weren't allowed to leave the room for medical reasons or something.
Medical tents were put in place outside hotel reception, with doctors ready to respond. The NHS subsequently issued new guidance to people.
If people come back from northern Italy and they subsequently, in the next 14 days, get symptoms, we recommend that they self-isolate and then phone 111.
While that was Britain's approach, other countries reacted differently. Italy went into a full-scale lockdown. Police outnumbered the public on the streets of Rome. Anyone passing needed a permit and a reason why. The enforcement was calm and compliant, but the cracks appeared quickly. Gomorrah actor Luca Francesi posted this video with his dead sister in bed in the background. This queue for a supermarket shows how seriously Italians took the restrictions. The director of intensive care in Lombardy, the worst hit region, describes the pressure.
It's like a bomb that exploded. Like all of a sudden you are like really submerged of patients. So it's like a tsunami that comes.
And knowing what you know now, what would be your message to other countries, other healthcare systems?
Get ready, because when it starts, then it's again like an explosion.
Italy's Prime Minister has announced a €25 billion fund to spend on this crisis, but it has already cost the country hugely. The head of Italy's emergency planning admits that they acted too late.
These measures, they come slowly, because all the country have to be somehow brought to these kind of measures.
Is the lockdown going to be extended?
The lockdown will stay as long as it is necessary.
While Italy was in lockdown, no such measures had been put in place in Britain, but the virus was already here. After first emerging in China, the virus moved rapidly and silently, and it was beginning to spread in Britain. In the first few weeks, the infection came from half a dozen countries, from China, Japan, Singapore, Iran, and then closer to home, from Italy, the Canary Islands and France. The first confirmed UK case was in York on January 30th, from China. A so-called super spreader tested positive in Brighton on February 6th. And in the early part of the month, the spread appeared minimal, until by the end of February, 23 cases were confirmed. By March the 3rd, it had doubled to 51. Then it trebled to 163. The first death on British soil occurred at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading at the start of March. The advice remained to wash your hands for 20 seconds.
You've got to do two verses. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
The Prime Minister put forward a £46 million package for scientific efforts towards a vaccine, but it won't be ready to halt this outbreak.
It looks to me as though there will certainly be a substantial period of disruption when we have to deal with this outbreak. How big that will be, how long that will be, I think is still an open question, but clearly it is something we're going to have to deal with for quite a while here in the UK.
As it turned out, it was only a matter of days before the virus started to impact every aspect of British life. The first big business casualty in the UK was the regional airline Flybe, which had already been struggling. It collapsed, putting 2,000 jobs at risk. The impact of coronavirus on air travel was the final straw.
We really tried to do everything that we possibly could back at the turn of the year, and unfortunately, though, with the situation that's developed with Corona, an already weak company, I'm afraid just hasn't been able to survive.
In London, extra cleaning of public transport was ordered to combat the virus, but everywhere felt quieter than normal. Well, this is Regent Street, normally bustling, the beating heart of central London. As you can see, it's extremely quiet. No wonder business leaders are worried. The restaurant sector has already seen a massive drop in the number of customers coming through its doors. San Carlo is one of the most successful restaurant groups in Britain.
Dammacio, una bruschetta, sego, uno spaghetti cacio e pepe, un tagliolino mazzara.
Employing 1,100 people with a turnover of around £100 million a year. Aldo Zilli has been in this business all his life, but can't remember a challenge like this.
Service!
We don't know what's going to happen. We're fighting a battle. We're at war with no one to fight, so we don't know we're fighting. It's quite obscure, you know. In my opinion, after 45 years in the business in this country, I don't know. I don't remember anything similar.
Carlo Di Stefano founded this business and acknowledges these are worrying times.
I never knew it could happen in 2020. It really shocked me that. And sometimes I get up in the morning, I think it's like by the gym. You know, I got to stop, but it's crazy. I mean, yesterday was dead. Today look like I got to be dead again. People cancel. When the phone rings, cancel. So it's in London, very, very bad.
Okay, ladies? Everybody all right?
It's about staying positive. It's about staying open if we can, if they don't close us, you know, because they might just say, like Spain and Italy and France, you know, what we have to do. We have to listen. But going forwards, you know, it's a lottery. We have to stay positive and keep our customers as safe as possible.
Ireland's government decided to shut all schools, colleges and universities for at least 2 weeks.
But I just hope it doesn't go on for so long, because the panic has really set in with parents right now.
The kids are going to be fine. Yeah, they're going to be bored off their heads, and the mammies will probably give out because they're going to be driven wild.
We sent home initial work for the boys to do, but teachers can add to that as time goes on. So it's not major work that's been sent home. It's work that will keep the kids occupied.
Supermarket shelves quickly began to empty in Dublin. And then came the decision to shut all pubs, bars and restaurants until the end of March. It was unprecedented. At this Dublin pub, the owner had to lay off his staff and close the premises, like every other bar in the country.
What we're looking at is we're looking at the closure of 7,000 pubs, you know, around the country, and that's estimated to be 50,000 jobs that have been lost as of yesterday. So the impact of that is absolutely huge, and plus the additional jobs that will be lost through the guys who supply into the pubs as well. So you're looking at wholesalers and then the guys supplying product in as well. So there's a massive amount of job cuts.
From the air, this was the impact of the virus on central London. Trafalgar Square almost deserted. Some roads empty, other drivers determined to carry on. The Prime Minister vowed to give people all the help they need.
Yes, this enemy can be deadly, but it is also beatable. This government will do whatever it takes.
There was a promise of 3 months' help for people struggling with their mortgages and a massive financial war chest to assist business.
This government will give you all the tools you need to get through this. We will do whatever it takes. Today I am making available an initial £330 billion of guarantees, equivalent to 15% of our GDP. That means any business who needs access to cash to pay their rent, their salaries, suppliers, or purchase stock will be able to access a government-backed loan or credit on attractive terms. And if demand is greater than the initial £330 billion I'm making available today, I will go further and provide as much capacity as required. I said whatever it takes, and I meant it.
In the United States, an even more rapid financial response. Government checks could be rolled out to citizens as early as April.
We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now. And I mean now, in the next 2 weeks.
In France, the whole country is now in lockdown.
At this moment, and since last night, 100,000 policemen are being deployed throughout the country. Their mission will be to make sure that each person has their signed declaration if they go out.
The nation of liberty and fraternity has curbed the freedoms its people so cherish. Queues at the supermarket, but people remain calm.
It's an important thing for everyone to stay at home, because it's thanks to that we cannot stop the propagation of the virus.
Non, j'ai pas de peur.
Pourquoi pas?
Bah, je sais pas, c'est un virus, ça va passer, hein.
In this town centre, the florist gave away his stock before the town's bells signalled the start of the lockdown. Italy remains the worst hit country in Europe. The crisis has not yet peaked here, but in Lombardy, the health system is on its knees. At this hospital, the laundry room is being used to treat patients. Staff working 18-hour shifts end up treating their own colleagues as well. A surgeon in Bergamo gave this update on the desperate situation.
A progressively increasing number of nurses and doctors get sick and stay at home. Some of them are hospitalized too, and some of them are in the ICU too.
And what would you say to your colleagues in Europe?
To get prepared to shortage of things they would never think could get short of. For example, oxygen. And personal protection devices are stolen. We have to face these problems that we could never imagine before.
Patients strong enough to travel from Lombardy are being brought by helicopter to other parts of the country. In just 10 days, this hospital in Rome has been turned into a COVID-19 facility with 180 beds.
We're thinking of you.
Thank you very much. We need it.
Yeah.
And good luck for you too for the future, because it's coming.
In the space of a few weeks, this virus has spread and spread. We've seen how governments around the world have reacted to it. Now we're seeing how people are being forced to change every aspect of their lives. This is a rapidly evolving situation, and nobody knows what is going to happen next. But one thing is certain: COVID-19 has changed 2020 beyond all recognition for everyone, everywhere.